Hey everybody, welcome to the Pro Edge Podcast. I'm your host Conrad. I'm sitting alongside Tim Meyer.
What up?
Very handsome man. I'm going to throw it to him real quick to give a shout out to one of our new sponsors, to Channel 99 Studios.
Yeah, we've got Rhino Rush, everybody. We just got our code, so head on over to rhinorush.com, and if you want to buy some bulk orders, or if you just want to buy a couple teasers, use Channel 9915 at checkout on the promo code. That's CHANNEL 9915. That'll hook you up with 15% off, and it's already a good price anyway. So go out, especially people from Idaho, Boise especially, and snag yourself some Rhino Rush. It's a local brand, local company. They use ephedra for their stimulant.
Hi.
They're the only company that has the license to the patent on that. And then they also have one that's really popular here. It's called the Rhino Relax. It's a feel-good. It kind of mellows you out. So it's like a mental stimulation and a physical downer. So it's like an upper and a downer. It's kind of weird. And it'll kind of give you a little bit of a body high, like a nice little relax, chill, you know.
Excellent. So this episode, we sat down with Dorian Willis, shot by Boise police 21 times. Mm-hmm. And we break into his story. Didn't get all the way through it. It's so long, but incredible story of survival, turning his life around, becomes a silver medalist in the Olympics after losing a leg from the shooting and going to prison. We talk justice. We talk mental health reform. Oh, man, we had a lot of fun. Shout out to MEP Meals if you guys are looking to get pre-cooked meals and get healthy with all the macros by a professional cook. That holy crap, their pre-cooked food. I was telling Dustin this at Jack's the other day when I walked in there. I'm like, you guys are nailing it down there, man. Mm-hmm. I've had pre-cooked food before. Holy fuck, is this good? Like his breakfast burritos and stuff. Mm-hmm. Like even the dinner, everything is excellent. Mm-hmm. And it's $7.50 to $8.50 a meal. Promo code ProEdge10. We don't promote stuff on this show that we don't use. And even though we're in the nutrition space, we don't hate. We're all local.
Yeah.
Supportive.
Well, we don't make shots.
yeah. We don't take shots. So MEP Meals, Jack's Nutrition, get on down there. Mm-hmm. Man, I just can't say enough good things about his company with that pre-cooked service. They even deliver. Super convenient. You get to choose the different options on your proteins from your vegetables and starches.
All customizable.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's got some new stuff on there. Like I got the breakfast burritos without the tortillas, so you just get a bowl, and it's basically sausage and eggs. But man, it's phenomenal. It tastes like it comes from a 4 or 5 star restaurant. I don't even know how the hell he does it in that amount of that quantity.
Well, and you can buy in bulk too. I think when they were on the show, they were saying you can just buy a bunch of meat.
You can too. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Take 2 pounds of chicken breast. Okay, cool. Get yourself some chicken breasts.
Yeah. So, folks, we also talk about Dog the Bounty Hunters, Dog, and his wife's insanely large eyeballs, and how they probably give her back problems, mm-hmm. and how he's Indian and wearing a dream catcher as a white guy. I think he claims 1/17. I'm suspect that fraction doesn't really exist in America. Anyway, the only way you're going to find out more on this is if you tune in right now. So sit down and enjoy.
Well, no less than 3 because I have 2 running legs. I got one that's for like long distance, and then I got I call it my Cadillac. That one's for sprinting. I went out for the Rio Games in 2016.
Okay.
And missed it just by a hair, man. And but so I take my long distance one everywhere I go because that's the one I use for jogging and whatnot. Then I have my regular leg that my day-to-day, that I wear, and then I always pack my powerlifting leg too when I'm lifting heavy.
Oh, right on.
So it's funny putting my bag through the X-ray machine, and I got just a stack of legs going through.
When you're flying, this guy's definitely smuggling dope. Yeah. All these fucking bogus ass legs. Those fucking fat TSA guys are like, oh, we got one here,
Dude,
fellas.
I just know that it's.
I got my bullet.
Yeah, I know it's gonna be at least a half an hour every time I go through TSA. Man, it's a nightmare every time.
Crazy.
So could you tell us a little bit about who you are? You said Rio for the games, and then how you became one that has to travel with many legs.
With many legs. I'm a man of many hats and many legs.
Indeed.
Both. So, well, where do I start, man? My name is Dorian Willis. Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it. This is cool. This is actually
you fit our style, bro.
Totally.
My second podcast, and the first one I did was nothing like this. You guys got the legit setup here. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
Idaho's #1
for podcasts.
Exactly.
Your mom went to college. You dirty animal podcast.
I think that's a good name for a podcast, actually.
Yeah.
I kind of want to make a show.
Your mom went to college.
Your mom went to college podcast.
Fuck, we better trademark that now.
Well, we just did. So, yeah, that's
so Dorian
crazy.
Willis, back to that. You travel with many legs because what happened?
I was shot 21 times in 2008 by Boise PD. They thought that I had a weapon. At that time in my life, I wasn't in a very good place. They showed up at the apartment complex I was hiding out at. When I saw 7 or 8 cop cars coming up the hill, usually that doesn't mean that they're just coming to say hi or, driving by just to check on the neighborhood. I thought somebody had ratted me out, told them where I was at, and so I was actually pulling out of the apartment complex when I saw them coming up. I threw my Suburban I had in reverse and was flying through the parking lot in reverse, going about 40 miles an hour in reverse. They saw me flying through the parking lot. I ended up throwing it up on the curb. I ran back up in the apartment complex. I had drugs on me. And, the place I was hiding out was my drug dealer's house. And so I ran back up there. I was flushing the drugs that were in my pocket down the toilet. I told him the cops are coming. You got to get rid of everything. So he's, flushing everything he's got down the toilet. I was only in the apartment for maybe a minute, and I go to make a break out the back. It was on the second story of this apartment complex, and when I went to the back door, it was too late. They'd already started surrounding the building, and so it was a 3-hour, long story short, 3-hour ordeal that day. I was going through ceilings, walls, anything to just try to get away from them, and ended up in the basement. Started on the second floor, ended up in the basement of this apartment complex.
So why were you so determined to get away if you weren't armed and just not walk out and surrender? Just curious. Or what was your mindset? Had you been on a runner of methamphetamines? What is the okay?
Yeah, so meth was my drug of choice.
Okay.
Well, for years I was a functioning cokehead. I never thought I had a problem. Drugs were just always a part of my life. Whether it was weed, and graduated when I hit high school to alcohol and LSD, acid, mushrooms.
Okay.
And then right after high school, I started running coke, and for a big drug dealer, I was making trips up to Milwaukee and driving down.
So at this point in your life, how old were you?
So at this point in my life, I was 20. When I started running, I was 22. When I started making runs, and that's when I started doing a lot of cocaine. I started my first company when I was 21 years old here in Boise, a construction company. The economy was booming back then, and so the first year, just getting on my feet, I think I made $8,000 the first year. So, solid year. Year.
It's a tough year.
Yeah. But it was the second year, I landed a couple builders, and that second year I made almost $100,000 my second year. So it went from, literally broke to making a decent living. And about that second year is when I got connected with this guy and I started making runs. And so, I was making an extra $20,000 a month doing runs. And so there was a lot of money, a lot of drugs, a lot of women. And I just thought it was always going to come like that.
Yeah.
And it was I was probably about 24 when I was reintroduced to meth. I had tried it once before, and it was just one night, and I partied and never thought about it again. And it wasn't until a couple years later that I was reintroduced to it. And as soon as I did it, I was like, man, this stuff is awesome. I had all this energy. I was up all night, and for 3 days, I think off that one line I did, I was up for 3 days.
Damn.
Yeah, and so it just didn't stop after that. I never stopped using. From the time I used that at one time, it just never stopped for
So
2 years.
At the time the police were coming up the hill, you probably you knew that you were going down hard, right? Because it was a warrant.
Yeah, so why I ran, when this all kind of went down, I had already, I had lost my company because of meth. I had lost my house because of meth. I hadn't seen my kids in a year. You know, I just didn't want them to see me like that, you know.
Right.
So I thought I was doing them a favor.
Yeah, and I think there's a misconception with people that are suffering from substance abuse and things like that, that they're not self-aware. And really, not only are they self-aware, but a lot of times that's why they isolate, is because they are self-aware that people think that, you know, this guy's fucking up, he's doing this, he's doing that, and it's just, it kind of adds to those layers of shit you got to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, my life was already shit, and that's, you know, when you get into an addiction, your life becomes shit. That's just how it is, you know. When you start losing everything that was important to you at some time, you know you're messing up. But, you know, that's the thing about addiction, is it's not just, oh, I know I'm messing up, man, I'm going to quit today. Like, it's an addiction. They call it addiction for a reason, man. And, you know, I had lost everything at that point in time. And when you lose so much, when, you know, I lost my company and I hadn't seen my kids for a year, and that was my choice. You know, once again, I thought I was doing them a favor, you know, because I didn't want them to see their dad the way I knew I looked, the way I knew I was. And so, once again, like you said, isolation, I just cut myself off from anybody and everybody. Everybody knew I was using, you know, it was no secret. And when my life fell apart, it was very clear why. And so at the time, though, it's funny because I look back and you don't want to take accountability for anything. Like, there was no accountability on my end. You know, it was my ex-wife's fault that I didn't get to see the kids. You know, she's a bitch. You know, she won't let me see my kids. And then there's it's the economy's fault that I lost my company. Yeah. You know, it couldn't be that my work started looking like garbage and I wasn't showing up when I was supposed to. It couldn't be that. You know, it's the economy. So it was just always pointing the finger at everybody else, and it was.
I worry about that a lot with the country, the victimization I see going on with people.
Oh, well, and you know, I think in today's society as well, with the upcoming generation, because they have everything at their fingertips, they have everything now. There is no working for it. There's a serious work ethic that is lacking in today's society, and so when you have everything that you want at your fingertips, you know, any information that you want, and these kids are being just handed over, you know, cars. Like I was at Eagle High School. I speak all over the country, but I speak a lot in Idaho at the schools. It's very important to me that, you know, I try to get these kids before they get to that point. But when I'm pulling in the parking lot, like Centennial Eagle High School, these kids are driving nicer cars than I am. I'm like, man, you know, this is crazy. My first car was a Ford Escort. It had rust all over the place, and most of the time I had to push it down a hill, jump start it. You know.
Mine was like an 85 Toyota Camry. It had like only like 60,000 miles on it, but it just didn't move. It was just it was so slow.
Not exactly a chick's there.
No, it was white, rusty.
They're like, did you guys see Tim and his 86 Corolla over there?
Yeah, it hasn't moved in a week. It's still there.
So let's get back to, we're in the apartment complex for 3 hours. What time of day is it?
So this was at 10 o'clock in the morning when I was pulling out. I had actually, at that point, I had lost everything, and I started doing collections for drug dealers around here. So it was the only time that I felt alive, man.
Define collections for drug dealers. You just enforce, right?
Yeah. So if you owed somebody money, they couldn't find you, they didn't know where to look for you to get the money back. They sent me because at that point I knew where a lot of the drug houses were. I knew all the dope heads. I knew where to find them, and I was good at it for a couple of reasons. A, I didn't care what I had to do to get the money back, and B, that was how I was supporting my habits. So. And
did you know you were on the radar of the police this time?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The
Pretty
things.
Self-aware of it.
Oh yeah.
So we're 3 hours into this ordeal. There's civilians that are obviously in the apartment complex at one time. Tell the audience. Define the moment when guns are drawn, I can imagine as an officer being in that position, they're on Fucksville high alert level 10, right? Because they're thinking this guy, it's a 3-hour standoff, blah, 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 blah. What's your mindset? Did you think it would end up there? How did it kind of play out in your mind, the chaos of the actual shooting, your foresight on it, and then when did you come to after the shooting? Because 21 times, I misquoted, I think I said 23, but after 10, I mean,
Tupac, Biggie, and 50 Cent all together, I got them beat. You put all three of those guys together.
21 times.
21 times.
Jesus.
Yep.
Who shot you, BP?
So put me in the environment of the shooting as it going down. The emotions you felt from the officers as you can remember, and the emotions you felt trying to run from them. Paint the picture.
All right. So I'd been through 3 floors, so I'll just run through that real quick. It started on the second floor. My whole game plan is I got up in the attic, I punched a hole in the bedroom closet, so I punched a hole up in the ceiling, and there was a box, so I pulled the box in front of the hole, so when you open the closet, you couldn't see the hole. I go all the way across the apartment complex and kick a hole in the ceiling. I dropped down, and I don't know if you can imagine a 220-pound white bald dude all tatted up dropping out of your ceiling looking like a crazy maniac. So I dropped down out of the ceiling.
That's probably why I got shot the first time, right?
Right.
And I know.
So they luckily no one was.
What the fuck?
What in Jesus' name?
What the fuck did you put my drink down?
Coffee strong.
Yeah, they luckily there was no one home in that one that I dropped down in, so that was good. My whole game plan was, because the cops saw me run into that apartment complex, was I was going to get into another apartment as far away from that one, the one that I was in, and get in the closet, change my clothes, and just walk out the front door. That was my whole game plan. So the problem with that was when I dropped into this apartment, into this particular apartment, I opened up the closet, and there was dresses, high heels, pumps, and a bunch of yard. It was some little old ladies, and I wasn't going to fool any. Hello, officers. How are you doing today? My game plan was shot out of the water. So I ended up being in that.
At this point, the game plan's fucking suspect as fuck anyway. Because any cop with half a brain cell is going to be like, look at this fucking guy. Stop right there. They would have had you pegged probably
yeah, man.
I hate to break it up for you, but
no, you're absolutely right, and it's that logic.
The logic.
The logic that this is gonna work. This is a solid plan.
Yeah, I love it though.
And because I don't stand out at all either. Oh my. Tats and bald head.
Yeah, this was before tats were really big too. This was when they were starting up.
Yeah.
So you drop through there, and you go through the closet. Where do you go from here? What's your mindset?
Well, so I actually was on the side of the apartment where all the police were parked. So it's right by the street. So I ended up opening the window, and I was just sitting there listening to them for like an hour. So I was listening to everything they were saying, what they were doing, and after an hour, they hadn't said anything about me. They just said there's somebody missing. There's somebody missing out of who's they were looking for somebody else that was up there, me.
Right.
And so then I heard a officer come out, and he started talking to the commanding officer, and he goes, "There's a hole in the ceiling." And I was like, well, fuck, I'm done.
Yeah.
So I ended up coming out of that apartment, and the way that the apartments were set up. It was all one building, but there was a glass door. You go through a glass door, 2 apartments on the bottom, 2 on top, and there was like 4 of those units. So
okay. So kind of like fourplexes.
Yeah. All one building, but you had to go through each individual door to get to those 4. So I come out and I look down, and I don't see any cops through the glass door at the bottom. So I run down the stairs, and I was going to get into another apartment on the bottom. As soon as I hit the bottom step, a woman police officer walked in front of the door. She looks over and sees me. So I do what any sane meth addict would do. I kicked the door that was in front of me off the hinges and ran into the bedroom. Luckily, no one was home at this apartment. I don't know if they had already evacuated everybody, or it was 10 o'clock in the morning, so most people had jobs that they go to.
Right.
But so I kicked the door off the hinges, and I go into that bedroom, and there was 2 dressers. There was like a taller one, and then a short and long one with like a vanity mirror. And so I ended up kicking a hole into the sheetrock, and the way that it was up on 8th Street, so the apartment's kind of staggered up the hill.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so when I kicked the hole in the sheetrock, it actually dropped down into the crawl space. And so I get into the crawl space and I pulled the dresser in front of the hole that now I kicked in front of.
Yeah.
You know, and so now I hit the hole again. And so I'm crawling around I'm like, okay, now where do I go? And I see a light at the other end of the, on the other side of the building. And so I went over to the light, and it ended up going into the basement of the apartment complex where all the storage units were for the apartments.
Okay.
And so it was just a little hole, like, you know, 3x3 hole. So I jump into the basement right when I hear the flash grenade go off. They had thrown a flash grenade into the room that I was in. Boom! And it just shook the whole building. You know, those things are crazy loud. Mm-hmm. So they stormed that room, and you know, later on reading the all the evidence and court documents and stuff, they had said it was a tactical nightmare because every time they thought that they had me pinned down, I would disappear.
Yeah.
And so I'm in this basement, and now there's literally nowhere for me to go, man. There's stairs going. There's two set of stairs that lead up. One goes outside, and one goes up into that apartment fourplex. So I'm looking around. I'm like, you know, I'm
transgender escape plan foiled.
Shot out the window.
So at this point, you're just like their stairways of both death.
Yeah. There's no options for me, man.
Okay.
And I just remember getting angry, man. Like I was just the more trapped I got, the more angry I got. And so this is, you know, a matter of maybe 5 minutes. I'm walking around, you know, I'd hide in one spot. I'm like, fuck, the dogs are going to find me, you know, the second they come down here. And so I come out of the first spot I tried to hide, and I walked across this board that was on the floor, you know, and it's concrete floor, it's a basement. But when I walked across this board, it sounded hollow, so I lifted up the board, and they were doing some plumbing repairs. And it was maybe like a 2.5 foot wide, maybe 3 foot wide tops by 6 foot long hole cut out for plumbing repairs. As soon as I lifted up the board, I heard the door open up and cops start running down the steps. So I jumped in this hole, pulled the board over me, and they're running over the top of me. The dogs came to the board after a couple minutes, start scratching at it, and but they didn't think that there was a hole. They thought it was just concrete, so they keep ushering the dogs on. And so, you know, I was in this hole for probably 45 minutes, close to an hour. Yeah. So, you know, the dogs come back a second time, start scratching on the board, and I'm thinking, this is it. And then, no, come on. They'd usher them on. So the dogs would leave again and start, you know, trying to follow my trail, but they kept coming back to the board. So the third time that they come back to the board, they start scratching on the board. I hear the cops that finally registered that, you know, he's under there.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I hear the cops start yelling, come out. And at this point, it's SWAT. So they're geared up. They got the jackets, the helmets, the rifles. You know, they're geared up. They brought in the big dogs. And so I remember when they found me, just going, you know, I was in there just cussing, motherfucker. You know, I was so mad. And
you're cussing aloud, so they're hearing this?
Yeah. I mean, once they knew I was in there, it was like,
you know,
whatever. Them have it. Yeah.
Okay.
So they start yelling, come out, you know, come out with your hands up, come out. And
let me picture this. How would you even come out? So you're on your back.
So I'm on my back, and the hole is so tight. It's dark. It's dusty. Like I've been in this hole for an hour.
How far away from you are them? Are you literally?
My nose is touching the board.
Oh damn.
Yeah. So whenever they'd step on it, I'd have to kind of turn my head to the side because it was that close to my face.
And you didn't know? They didn't know if you were armed or not?
No, and my charge while I was running, because a few months earlier I had caught a modified weapons charge. I got caught with a sawed-off shotgun.
So they're gonna assume you are.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Immediately.
Yeah, they have
to. And I was not. They knew the things I was doing. They knew that I was doing collections. They knew that I was at that point I was violent. And so
they're on 10.
Yeah. They're expecting the worst.
Yeah.
And so I'm lying in this hole, dirty, mad, and I know I'm going to jail. You know, I had cut my ankle monitor off and you know, went on the run for 2 or 3 weeks, doing as many collections as I could because I was going to try to get out of town. I had $10,000 in my pocket, and I was out that day. Like that day, I had planned on leaving. And so I was mad, like, why didn't I leave an hour earlier? You know,
Damn.
All these things are going through my head. Like, I could have been out of here. I could have been gone. And so as they're yelling, dogs are barking, it's just kind of chaos. So I remember pushing the board with my head first just to get it up a little bit, and then grabbing it and pushing it. I threw it over, and as I stood up, all I see is the lights from the rifles, like it's blinding me. You know, there's I didn't know how many cops were down there. I just knew that there was lights all over the place shining on me. So I put up my left arm to kind of shield the light out of my face, and I'm expecting the dogs, man, because, you know, they like to let the dogs loose.
Yeah.
So I was expecting the dogs to chew me up, like, and
you
so,
know that from probably experience, just in the field you were in, right? And people being around the police, you probably know them for, they'll let the dogs loose on your ass.
I'm lucky
like
that
you were in the people that would be in the know.
Yeah, yes, I was at that point in time. I actually knew quite a few people that had got chewed up by the dogs, and, you know, there's good and bad in everything, and that's no different for the police. I have some really good friends that are in the police department now, and there's some great dudes. You know, if you're not doing anything wrong, then most of the time you don't have anything to worry about. But, I was doing a lot wrong at that time, and I had a lot to worry about. So when I stood up, I had my left hand shielding the light out of my face, which saved my life, because they said that if I hadn't had my hand up, the bullets were redirected when they hit my left arm instead of hitting me in the head. You know, they hit my left arm and were redirected. But so it was chaos. The dogs are barking. The cops are pointing their rifles at me, and they're going, "Get down, get down." I'm going, "Fuck you!" When my hand came up to flip them off, you know, I just heard pop, 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 pop. And these are automatic AR-5s. So every time they pulled the trigger, 3-round bursts. Pop, 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 pop. And so as far as I know, there was 2 officers, I know that much, that were in the basement, and they both unloaded their clips. And so I think there was like 30-something rounds fired off, and they hit me 21 out of the 34. I mean, this is, you know, from point-blank range. I'm 5, maybe 10 feet away tops from these 2 guys. And so I remember that when the gun started going off, I hit the ground, and it didn't register immediately what had happened. My whole body felt like it was on fire, so I'm like I remember patting my chest and my arm, and I was like, oh shit. Like I thought they hit me with some kind of, you know, chemical. I had no idea. And then I looked down, and it was almost like a cartoon, because I saw blood go squirt, squirt, shooting out of my chest, you know. Wow. And that's when it registered. Shit, man, they shot me. You know,
at what point was it just an instant hail of fire and then it stopped?
Yep. I mean, it all happened, boom, that quick.
And at what point did they start giving you first aid?
Well, so that never happened as far as I know. So from what I've been told and what I remember.
So had you passed out from blood loss?
I remember. So there's the one thing that I remember more vividly than anything, that after I got shot, from the time I got shot to the time I passed out, was the sound of my breath, because I was suffocating. I was drowning on my own blood because 2 of the bullets had went into my lungs. And so, you know, my breath, I mean, that's the one thing, man, is, you know, just trying to get a breath.
You remember that?
Yep. That's
a frightening sound.
That's a scary thing.
Yeah. And I remember the pace of it. You know, it was, each one seemed to get just a little harder and a little slower. You know. Yeah. And but I felt my lungs, like you could. It's a weird feeling when you're drowning from the inside out. You know. I mean, that's how it is.
So were you cognizant enough in your mind to know that you're dying? Did you think you were dead?
Yeah, I thought I was done. And so one of the cops came over. He had the light shining on me from his gun, and I, like, honestly, when he was pointing that thing at me, I thought he was just going to finish me off. Mm-hmm. And so I remember him bending down, and with the last bit of piss and vinegar that I had in me, I remember trying to take a swing, you know, with 21 bullets in me on my back. And the last thing I remember was my feet coming off the ground, and I was being drugged. And when my head hit, because there were concrete steps, when my head hit the 3rd step going up, that was the last thing I remember. It was like boom, 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 and I was out.
So they dragged you out of the basement like that?
They dragged me out of the basement. From after that, I don't remember anything. From the witness testimonies that I've read, I was put out in the front yard. They were standing around my body talking. No one was trying to help me. I think at that point in time, you've been shot 21 times. Like, you're done. Like who survives that?
Right.
And so I just, from what I've read, they say that they were just standing around talking. The paramedics pulled up just like a few minutes after they drug me out, and they put me.
Well, there's a station not far from there, luckily, yeah, because there's many times you were shot.
But this is what trips me out is they put me in the ambulance. The ambulance didn't turn. So the girl that I was dating at the time, also obviously an addict.
Right.
So her and one other person that was with her followed the ambulance to the hospital. So I'm up off 8th Street, so I'm maybe a couple minutes away from St. Luke's right there. But they took me to St. Al's. They ended up taking me to St. Al's, and they didn't turn on the lights the entire way to the hospital. Like, they were stopping at the lights. They were, there was no rush.
They thought you were dead.
They thought I was done. So there's no rush to get me there whatsoever.
And you don't remember, this is all testimony coming back to you. And this all went through court, so it's accurate for the most part, right?
Yeah, that's from everything I know. This is what transpired after I was shot.
That is fucking odd.
That's crazy.
Yeah, they didn't turn on the lights all the way to the hospital, and so once they got to the hospital, they pulled me out. And to this day, man, I call the lady, a couple times a year, send her Christmas cards because she saved my life. Lisa Hansen, if you're out there, I love you with all of my heart. You're the reason why I'm still here, girl.
And so she was the ER nurse on call?
She wasn't even the ER nurse. She was a wound care nurse that just happened to be walking by. She checked when they brought me in, for some reason she said she checked my pulse, and she just, like, they thought I was dead, but she checked my pulse and she felt just a faint pulse. And so she's like, what in the fuck are you guys doing? Like, he's not dead. And so everybody's looking at each other like, oh, shit. So
they are.
My bad.
Dude.
Yeah, so.
It's a little frightening.
So it was because of.
That's not even the military. Yeah. Unless you walk through an area where you've put them down and fucking not even execute them, you push through an objective like that. But, like, if someone's, you render aid, even to your enemy.
And there was
and to see the ambulance, I can expect it kind of from the cops, even
they can't really do much, I guess. I don't know.
This is
CPR.
Blood loss. This is what most people don't realize. Like 90% of casualties in combat are related to blood loss, and blood loss can be stopped significantly with a belt in most cases, depending on where you're at. Where it's at. But okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, 21 bullets probably a little bit harder to.
Yeah, I don't even know where it's.
Yeah, I'm sure he didn't have enough belts.
Just wrap it around his waist. I don't know.
They're like, melt him. Throw some.
Anybody got some tussin?
Sprinkle some drugs on him.
Rub some tussin on it.
Yeah, sprinkle some drugs on him. Let's get the fuck out of
Bigger
here.
and blacker. Is that Chris Rock? Yeah.
Rub some tussin on it.
Broke my arm.
Yeah, so it was I've reached out to the two officers. There was two officers that shot me. I've reached out to them both several times, and from what I understand, I've never heard back from them. They have no want whatsoever to sit down with me, and I don't need any closure. I really don't. It is what it is. But I just always thought it would be good on both parties just to sit down and go, look, man, this is because. For the cops that shot me, I apologize that I put you in that position. I apologize that I put you in a position that you had to pull the trigger, that you felt like you had to pull the trigger. However many times you pulled the trigger. A lot. So I'm sorry.
If they hit you 21 times.
I'm sorry that your finger had it scratched that day, and oh shit, sorry, bud. But I thought it would be good on both parties just to sit down. And just talk about it, because I'm sure they have a completely different perspective on how things transpired that day, what happened that day. But they've just never given me the opportunity to hear it. So
yeah, interesting.
Which is that's their prerogative, whatever. I'm not, if they don't feel like they need that, then that's on them. For me, I consider myself friends with Bill Bones. He's an amazing chief of police, a great guy, and he's really gone out a limb. Even though a lot of the officers, he's caught flack. I've had lunch with him a couple of times, and he's caught flack from a lot of the officers because a lot of them still will never see me as anything other than that piece of shit felon, that violent criminal, that dope head, meth addict. That's all they'll see me as. No matter what I do, no matter what I accomplish in my life, that's what they will see me at the rest of their lives. And nothing I can do is going to change their minds. And so I know that, you know, the couple times that I've had lunch with him, and we've done some events in the community together, he's caught flack for it. And, you know, I think it's really incredible that the chief of police is willing to set an example to the rest of his officers that, you know what, people can change. And if you do not give the people that are really changing a shot, then why are you in this position? Why are you doing this? Why are you a cop? Isn't it the whole point is to help people, protect, serve, help?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I don't want to throw other cops' names out there and under the bus, but there's some really great cops on the force, and on the other foot, I know some really dirty cops, you know, from my time when I was using, that, you know, there's no reason they should have a badge whatsoever.
Yeah, they don't necessarily play by the rules or
no, and they use that badge for anything but what it should be used for, you know. But once again, that you're gonna get good and bad in any aspect in life, no matter what you do.
So, when did you come to? And what's that like? You come to in the hospital and you're like, holy fuck, I'm alive?
No, that was a trip in itself, because I was in an induced coma for 3 months, and so you know, they just had me so drugged up because there was so much trauma, and they didn't know day to day if I was going to make it. You know, the first 6 weeks they said was kind of the hairiest. Like every day they were kind of expecting me to check out. And at 6 weeks, all my organs shut down, and I had to be paddled back twice. Once the day that they brought me in, they paddled me back because I flatlined, and then 6 weeks later, all my organs shut down from the trauma, and they paddled me back again. And after the 6 weeks, they had to put me on a dialysis. So there was a machine pumping my blood for me. There was a machine breathing for me. There was a machine, you know, feeding me. I was being kept alive by machines, basically. And so it was.
Is there anything that goes? I'm just curious, like being in a coma. Do you remember any of it, or is there any flashes of time or perspective of time, or is it just like you went to sleep and then woke up?
Well, it was what was really difficult for me was when I started to come to slowly, I couldn't distinguish what was reality and what was my dreams, because they started tying together. So like the TV would be on in my room, and you know, I would hear something going on the TV, and that would tie in with my dream. Like there was one time where
did you have physical function at this point, or were you just
no
but you were conscious in a sense?
In a sense, yeah. And it was just short. Like when I would start to wake up, I would always start ripping tubes out, and because I didn't know what was going on, you know, I didn't know where I was, and it was usually tying in with the dream. You know, I think that I would be chained to a boat, and these nurses are trying to put me in the boat, and I'm going, what in the what the fuck is going on?
Did I pay for this?
Yeah.
Fuck, I hope so. Am I that rich? Jesus. If I could pull this off, I must be wealthy.
Yeah, it was
basically
really
what they did with Michael Jackson. The same stuff to induce a coma, right? Like the same medicine. What is that? What's
that movie with Leonardo DiCaprio where there's like the layers to your consciousness?
Shutter Island?
Deception?
Is
it Deception?
I don't know.
Where they're in your dreams, though. It's like lucid dreaming, but they tap into your dreams.
Yeah.
People, you know what we're talking about out there.
Yeah.
We
don't know what we're talking about, but you know what we're talking about.
You know.
Come on, guys. We need your fucking help here for once. Step up to the plate.
Inception.
Inception.
I think that was what it was called. Anyway, so that's kind of how it was. Like there was layers, and I couldn't distinguish what was real and what wasn't for a while. And so it wasn't until weeks of this, and it was getting harder and harder because my dreams started getting more vivid and more lucid, and so I was starting to come to more and more. But they were strapping me to the bed because it would take like 10 nurses to hold me down. At this point in time, I'm skin and bones. I was 220 pounds when I got shot. When I woke up, I was 129, soaking wet. So
How do they-
100 pounds lighter.
How do they even
They
keep you
feed you.
alive on that? Yeah.
Well,
Do they feed you when you're in a coma?
It's just
or how
through a
does that-
tube. I mean,
tube,
you're just
yeah.
getting liquid
Just
through a tube.
nutrients.
Yep,
Mhm.
just the bare minimum to keep you
Keep you
alive. That's all
alive.
they can do.
Yeah.
And so,
especially with organ failure.
So
Yeah,
was there
yeah.
was there a moment where you're up and you're fully conscious and you're like, take me to the moment that you have, how many decades? 2 decades at this point built up of, you probably came up in a, is it safe to say you came up around drugs?
Yeah, I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood in Denver, Lakewood, Colorado. There's a lot of projects
Bounty Hunter
around. And
was after your family members.
dog.
I heard he's Indian.
Who's this?
Dog the Bounty Hunter?
He looks like
Oh.
it. He looks like
He
it.
claims it.
Strong Indian
Claims
heritage.
like Native American.
It's like, yeah, I guess if you grow your hair out and throw some beads in there and wear a dream catcher and
Well, the beads
I
is
love
what
it.
make you legit.
yeah,
I mean, that's
He's
what I
legit,
read.
though.
yeah,
Legit.
he's
He lives down there?
Yeah, I think he has a house or they live in Denver and then Hawaii too. They
Highway,
bounce
yeah.
bounce back and
Yeah.
forth.
Okay.
Dog.
This episode, best tits kill someone.
The
Those
dog.
things are insane.
His
What's his wife's name?
Beth,
Beth.
dude, how about
How does
the
she not
fun
tip
bags
over?
on that hose
Yeah,
hound? Jesus.
she's
What are you gonna do with those?
she's aggressive, dude. That's
Yeah.
all I gotta say.
She
And her
fucked me
look,
up.
her looks aggressive.
Maybe that's why she's always sitting in the car. I don't think I've seen her out of the car very much in that show.
I dig it though. I think
She
She just
drives
cannot support those things.
those.
Yeah.
I like her confidence though. Like I dig it
She's gotta have back problems.
for sure. Yeah,
She's
those
gotta
things.
have-
Those
That's probably
things.
why you never see her get
It's
out.
like
'Cause
having
it's just like
fucking two toddlers strapped to your chest. Those fucking things are
I
going
bet
everywhere.
She's
Good
killer
luck with
at
that.
front somersaults though.
How did we get on
Dude.
Dog the Bounty Hunter's wife's tits? Dog the Bounty
The dog
Story of redemption.
and the dog.
Olympian. Shot 21 times. And Dog's
And
wife's
Dog.
tits. Yeah. Beth, you're beautiful.
That's great.
Dog, I'm sure you're Indian. Moving on.
Positive you're Indian.
So where were we before we got off on that hiatus?
The hospital when I started coming through.
The life was there that moment where you're like, because I'm saying you come from 2 decades of kind of a rough drug where you just like surrender, or what was it like for you? Was it a surrender? Was it holy fuck, I'm alive, I gotta go?
I remember it was all kind of surreal. I couldn't talk because I had a trach in. So that was really, really frustrating for me because they would hand me this stupid little fucking pad that you had to like type what you wanted to say in, and I couldn't even hardly see straight with all the drugs that they had me on. So
like a
that
speak and spell.
yeah, like
like that.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it really was. It was like,
And you're aware you're facing prison too, and you're in this predicament, right?
yeah. So prison, like that really didn't set in until when I got the trach out and I could start actually asking questions, and so the prison thing didn't even really, I hadn't thought about that really. I think probably the most, one of the things in the hospital that was really hard for me, I'd say hands down the hardest thing in the hospital, it wasn't the 4 or 5 hours every single day of them ripping bandages off and putting them bandages back on. It wasn't the pain of trying to sit up and do anything at all. Like none of that compared to every single day they would wheel me somewhere, whether it was to x-rays or MRIs. The one thing that I will never ever forget is the way that I felt every time they wheeled me. I hated it more than anything I think I've ever hated in my entire life. Was when they take me to these places in the hospital, we'd always have to go to the elevators, and if any of you have been to the St. Alphonsus Hospital, the elevators that they have in there all have mirrors, and they would wheel me into the elevator, and I fucking hated what I saw with everything that I was. I hated that person. I hated the way I looked. I hated the way I felt. I kept thinking to myself every time they wheeled in me, and I had to see that skeleton of a man. Why am I here? Why the fuck am I still alive? Why did I survive this? Like, was I not punished enough, God? You want to keep me around so I have to look at this? Like that was the hardest thing for me to deal with, was just looking at myself in the mirror and hating the person that I saw. Hated it. And so that will always stick with me, always.
And how long were you in the hospital?
9 months.
9 months. And from that 9 months, how long did you spend in prison?
So they and all the nurses at St. Al's, I love you so much. Like they're just incredible staff there, incredible doctors, incredible nurses. But so when it came to the point, I realized that when I got out, just because I got shot 21 times, that is not a get out of jail free card, and that I was still looking at time. I remember the day I was getting out, the nurse came in and she said, "Hey, you get to go home today." And I just started bawling, like immediately started bawling. I mean, this is
because your home was Ada County Jail.
Yeah, well, yeah, my home was prison, and
so you had gone to court by this time?
No.
Okay.
So, like, I can't even walk by myself at this time. Like, I can take a couple steps and then I have to sit down. Like, I can barely support my own weight, even at 130 pounds. My whole body just atrophied so much. I had wound vacs on, so it's basically like this electronic purse that you got to pack around, and there's tubes going down to all the different holes that I still had in me that it sucks the infection out, all the
like drain.
Yeah,
like
all the excess fluids that are not good for you. And so I got tubes going everywhere. This wound vac that I got to pack with me everywhere I go. And but the nurse came in, she goes, "You get to go home today." And I just started bawling, and she goes, "What's the matter? I thought you'd be happy." And I said, "No, this has become my safe haven. Like, the minute you guys send me out of here, they're going to take me to prison." I said, how am I going to survive in prison looking like this? And so then the nurse is crying. We're sitting there crying together. She had no idea,
So you were self-aware that you had to go to prison like that, and that's probably
pretty
like the
but street cred,
anxiety,
though, right?
Yeah.
You just got shot a lot, and you're alive, dude.
Yeah,
21 times. You think the judge would be like, "I can give him 3 months for every shot, maybe"?
Yeah, that's what I would think. Yeah, just be cool.
Something.
Yeah,
That's a shit ton.
Yeah.
What does that say?
a lot.
Target practice, boys.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Those things pop off quick, too.
Hey, look, man, I'm not bulletproof. I'm bullet resistant.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
Yeah.
There's a difference. No, but when I went home, they were supposed to call and notify, because they were federal charges, so they were supposed to notify the feds when I was released. And I just remember the nurse going, I think that I'm going to forget that I had to make that call. I'm so sorry. And those nurses bought me another 6 months at home. So
nice.
It was 6 months before the marshal showed up at my door, and I remember when they showed up at my door. It's coming, but it never gets easier. You know that they're going to come eventually, and it was so hard when they showed up. And
What's crazy? It had been so long. Realistically,
You were
even not
like a
that
free
long,
man for, you said 6 months?
Yeah, it was 5 or 6 months.
That they even
They didn't
let
even
that.
watch you? Like, did they have cars, like, patrol or anything? They would just make sure you didn't run?
Well, I think
I guess
a couple
where were you gonna
things.
run?
Where am I going to go? Like, they knew I was so messed up. So when I was shot, that day that I was shot, I was actually in police custody because I had like 20 charges, destruction of property, evading, but the list goes on and on. And so they put 2 officers. Keep in mind, I'm in a coma. I'm not going anywhere. They had 2 they had to have 2 officers guarding my door at all time because I was in police custody. So they had to have a police officer there. Like, I wasn't going anywhere. But they also realized that when I wasn't going anywhere, that because I'm in police custody, they are going to be responsible for that bill, because if you're in police custody, they have to pay for it. And so they dropped all those charges. I think it was probably 5 or 6 days into it, and which then the bill went to me.
Excellent. So,
Damn.
before we continue on this fucking rad story, incredible. You're a silver medalist. What Olympics?
Well, so yeah, it's it's a big swing from shot in the hospital to over to the Olympics.
So why don't we talk? Why don't we do this?
Let's keep
why don't we do
talking
this
about the hospital
next time?
stuff.
Why don't we talk about this next time?
Yeah, we're gonna
We'll
have
carry
you
it
back
on to the
for
next
other one.
episode.
Just know that I did not stay a shithead, okay? So I actually got my shit together, and I would like to think that I'm making a difference in this community now.
Yeah, I want to hear the rest of the story. And
I just want to say I think it's amazing what you're doing with the
Shot at Dawn Project.
With the Shot at Dawn Project. If there's anything that I can do to help you with that, man, just say the word.
We're gonna break up the judicial system, and I need speakers, and you're my guy. Mm-hmm. So
I'm the dude.
I'm trying to get Larry Sharp. He ran for governor in New York as a libertarian and lost, but he's a veteran. He's also big on mental health, and I see eye to eye with him on a lot of things with mental health, but one of the things he says about these mass shootings in schools and stuff is that they're a public suicide, and he correlates it back to the mental health side of it, and he's just real logical in his thinking, and that's kind of what my facility's all about, trying to get through these infancy years. But a guy like him, and then me and you out on the speaking trail, I think we can change a lot of lives.
I absolutely agree.
On the veteran side, on the judicial side, we've at some point as a country, we have to look at our judicial system and the way our federal government's run and say, there's a reason there's this shit happening in Baltimore and Dallas and stuff like that. We can't relate to it out here in Meridian, Idaho, but we have to understand like what happened with the state of Wisconsin and what they're doing on the making a murder stuff. I mean, after watching season 2 of that, it's fucking obvious they covered it up. I mean, that attorney basically proved that case. That guy should get a new trial. And if he is guilty, it's on the fucking state to go out and get new evidence. But don't keep suppressing and don't keep lying. And if anything, take that fat fucking prosecutor and throw him in the pen and see how he likes it. Like at some point as a country, we have to look at our system and go, there's parts broken here. And we have to fix it. And it's not the police's fault. It's not the current people in the court system fault. Hell, it's not even the politicians' fault. This is decades of bureaucracy and red tape that have built this machine that now needs reorganized a little bit. And one thing we definitely need to reorganize is the restructuring of our judicial system. We're taking young Americans that are growing up in poverty-stricken neighborhoods, young Americans. They don't know nothing but gang violence, drugs. Their way out is that. That's really their way out. Mm-hmm. Sell drugs to make your own hip hop album. Mm-hmm. Like that's one of the ways out. And these guys get wrapped up when they're 17, 18 in a felony, and then they go to prison, and the recidivity rate's 80% because we're teaching them how to be criminals. We're not. Healing guys.
And when you locking these people up, I could tell you firsthand, because I've been to prison. I served I was sentenced to 2 years in the federal penitentiary, and I served a year and a half of that, and then I did 6 months in a halfway house. And I can tell you right now that it's a joke if you think that you're going to send somebody to prison and that they are going to
be rehabilitated.
Yeah, be rehabilitated. There's no rehabilitation in these prison systems. That's not what it's set up for. And being in prison is punishment enough. But the way that they feed you, the way that you're treated, granted, I'm not saying by any means that there's a lot of people in prison who deserve to be there, that need to be there. But I cannot tell you how many people that I was locked up with that I'm going, you're serving 15 years for what? You're serving 10 years for what? Yeah. And you expect those people to come out and be a serving member of society, productive member of society?
It's the same model. It's a different formula. You take young men, as opposed to sending them to prison, you send them to my alternate sentencing program. We put them in a good community with mentors. We fix their credit. We teach them how to balance a checkbook. We teach them how to be productive, tax-paying Americans. Well, and that's option one. Option two is we don't build my facility, and we keep locking these guys up, and we spend $38,000 a year to house them, and that's conservative. And we don't do anything but draw more money from the taxpayers when we could. Even if I took that 80% rate and I dropped it down to 40%, which I think is very achievable. I think 60% is not only achievable, that would happen right away on recidivity rates in certain states.
Absolutely.
And what's the cost of my program? I'll tell you what it is for a soldier. It's $144,000 for 2 years. So you do the math, American people. Do we want people putting money that have potential back into our economy, or do we want them sucking it out because we have a broken system that we call justice? Where is the justice? If it's going to be rehabilitation, if we're going to claim to rehabilitate people, the data's out there. The way you do it doesn't fucking work. It's obvious.
And you can't lock these guys up, and then you've done your time, you served your time. When you get out, now you can't get a place to live because you have to put checked out mark on the box that you're a felon when you're trying to apply for a place. You go to get a job and you're turned down. We need to be teaching these people coming out of prison trades. The trades gap is so insane right now.
Yeah.
There's so few people to fill these trade positions. You know, whether like I own a concrete company. You know.
Oh yeah, you're not hiring guys right now. You can't find them that want to work.
I can't find them. I can't find them. They are not out there. I've had ads in Utah. I've had, the Statesman, Facebook. I mean, you name it. I got ads out there. I cannot find help. And if we had a program where I could pull some of these guys from the prison, give them a shot.
Yeah.
That's all they need is a shot. Teach them something that they can actually live on. Teach them something that they can be proud of when they're done with their day. You know what? I did that. Give them something that they can be proud of and watch how their lives turn around.
Yeah, and we're not taking violent offenders and throwing them out in the community. We're talking about, nonviolent, younger guys and females, but actually trying to fix their life and giving them the time to heal. And in that 2 years, where normally they would just go to breakfast, write a letter, go fuck off in the yard, or do whatever you do, which none of is really productive in jail. They have their bullshit recovery systems that they call recovery systems. You're doing it in jail. You're only attacking addiction. You're not attacking finance. You're not attacking sexual therapy, all this other stuff. Like, there's just, the odds are so stacked up in that system. You're gonna produce failure. You really are. It actually enhances failure, and that's what the Shot at Dawn project on the alternative sentencing side would be all about. It would be about taking these young people and listen. My dad's a career police officer. I did law enforcement in the Coast Guard. I was a federal law enforcement officer. I can see things from both sides and be logical about it. And I'm not saying everything in our judicial system's wrong. It's not. There's a lot of guys that belong, like you said, that need to be locked up. But for fuck's sakes, we need to figure something out, because what's happening in the state of Wisconsin and what's happening in our judicial system in these inner cities has got to be enough smoke to know a fire's fucking coming.
Well, and it has to stop being a profitable business for these corporations that are buying prisons and making it a profit.
Here's what's scary. Now, you've got entrepreneurs going through entrepreneurship programs learning about privatization of prisons and how to make money on the privatization of prisons. I can take those same guys that you're sending to prison and put them through my alternate sentencing program, and I'll guarantee you we'd never cover how to privatize prisons, because that is bullshit.
Absolute garbage.
That muddies the waters. And ethically, I think there needs to be huge changes. And that comes right back. If I was a governor of Wisconsin, this is what I'd tell the governor of Wisconsin right now. Hey, bro, remember O.J. Simpson? Yeah, everyone fucking thought he did it. Even though he got away with it, the entire country thinks that Stephen Avery didn't do it, and your fucking boys covered it up. And I want answers on the fucking kid that had all the child porn on his computer and the headless women. And when your prosecutor said there was no evidence on that computer that was... There is more holes in that case. If I was the governor, I would bitch slap everyone in that fucking state and just be like, what the fuck's going on? You guys are going down, not me.
How is he still in jail? It's insane.
And how it's so insane. Bureaucracy in the court system and old school and tied up. And we need to figure out a way to streamline. When did we come up with this system? 300 fucking years ago. Okay, well, we might want to evolve a little bit like some other stuff. This system is fucking broken. And what's happening on Netflix, and people say, well, that's a documentary based on the defense's side. Listen, I'm logical. If the prosecution could give me some evidence that I could convict this guy on, I would take it. All I've seen from the prosecution is a refusal to participate in the documentary, for one. And for two, their so-called evidence that they held out of the first trial, the sweat DNA on the hood. Are you fucking kidding me? And then this gal that came back and has gotten 17 acquittals has painted a picture that chops that fucking case up to anyone with half a brain. Even if I was that victim's family, I'd be like, holy fuck, I'd be upset at the state. That officer that's involved, the prosecutor, man, they need to put those fuckers away and teach them a lesson.
Yep.
Like, no,
it's not okay.
You may protect protect us, and you may be that line, but we still are a country of morals and ethics. And you are fucking crossing that line when you are tampering with evidence to try to get a conviction on a guy that is suing you for rightfully so for wrongful imprisonment. The whole thing stinks. And if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's a fucking duck. And that guy, I'm telling you, I wish the governor of Wisconsin would just rip the fucking lid off that thing. If I was him, I would, because, like I said, the American people that have half a brain that actually has sat and watched the series, it's OJ, bro. No one thinks that guy was fucking innocent. Not even the people cheering when he got let free. That was a social thing. That wasn't reality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So fucking wake up, Wisconsin.
Well, get your shit together, Wisconsin. Jesus.
Uglier people in that documentary.
No,
for
you could
God's
not.
Sakes.
No.
Jesus.
No, you really couldn't. That's the
I shouldn't
definition of
say that.
hillbilly.
Sorry, I went off that tangent.
No,
but yeah,
you're good.
I've got answers, and I want to fix some of these problems.
Well, you know, I absolutely think what you're doing is amazing, man. And we need to. When did we as a people lose all the power? Like we have given all
You make
all
a
the
valid
power
point.
to the government, to these people. Like we're letting them. It's terrifying to me, and people think I'm crazy for staying in Boise because they don't have to have a reason to throw you in jail. They don't have to have a reason to arrest you. They don't have to have a reason to search your vehicle. They can do whatever they want. And that's scary to me.
And usually what you see, too, departments usually have some historical relevance, and Idaho's been pretty good about that. And by that, I mean, like, this shit in Baltimore and stuff like that, in Oakland, fuck, Oakland's been over in federal oversight most of my life for a reason.
Yeah.
I think they only have like 1.5 cops for like every 10,000 people or for every 1,000
it's insane.
Dude, they're outgunned, outnumbered.
1.5 to like 1,000.
Yeah,
This is crazy.
There's both sides on it. But like you said, the people, and that's what I think, like, you can't necessarily, it's not the cops, man. They're just, a lot of times they're out doing they're in this big wheel of bureaucracy, just like the court system.
And they're doing
like,
what
it's super hard to
told.
sit down and say it's his fault, it's police's fault, it's this' fault. The Stephen Avery case is a little different because you can look at the court system that prosecuted him and you can point out motherfuckers and say, hey,
that's the issue.
The system as a whole, and you're allowed to do this. That's what's scary. They're allowed to operate in that system and take precious, the most valuable thing in this world is life. And they have the ability to take yours one day at a time. And when they get caught with their pants down, they have the ability to cover it up because they'd rather do that than admit they made them a fucking mistake and that they had a corrupt cop and a kid that committed murder but that it was going to bust roll Stephen Avery so they could get out of that lady fucking basically told the story how it went down. And I could say anyone with logic would have to lean at an 80% chance. She's pretty spot on.
Pretty credible.
Dude, scary.
She's overturned some big cases. Yeah, that was a really good documentary, though.
Yeah, I couldn't stop watching it, man.
Yeah,
I
and that's-
binge watched the shit out of that.
I don't
Both-
want
both
anyone
seasons.
to take any of this as a knock on the police or our justice system as a whole. I think it needs, like I said, it's this big wheel, and we've got to be logical about it and say, all right, let's go tweak it a little bit because it's getting to the point. Like, I have a feeling if you put me on the news in Oakland, I could ask the people of California, I could tell them my story and how I'm going to save their young men from getting locked up in prison for life. I bet you I could get everyone in California to donate me $1 because what else are they going to do? Each politician wants to tell them an answer and this and that, but that money's all fucking dirty, man. That's all coming from lobbyists and stuff. At some point as a people, we have to step in and start correcting this from the private side. And that's how we bust the judicial system up. We bust it up from the private side. We put real alternative sentencing programs and then we take it to the court and we say, this is what we have and this is going to work. And you got to give us a chance because we're the people. We don't agree with your system no more.
And it can't be some bullshit. I mean, I'm sorry. I know that there's people that make it through drug court, but drug court is set up to fail. Like, though, that is not a system that's set up to succeed.
It's alternative sentencing. It surely is by definition. But let's pull the data once again. Oh, America! You just pull the data. Just pull the data.
What is drug court, by the way? They just keep you on a regimen
you are on such
UA
a strict
schedule?
like you can't. I know people that have been thrown back in because they had pictures of somebody that has a felony, and
it's babysitting to the extreme.
Insane. Yeah, babysitting to the extreme. They have to pee
you know
like
what?
every single day. They have to check in at like 5 a.m. If you don't, you're
They have to go to
done.
their classes.
Again, we're in the
Yeah.
we're in the over penalization of America here, to where we have to have those programs because they certainly fuck can't send them all to prison because they don't have the beds for them.
Well, and a lot of those people who have to go through drug court, a lot of them they can't drive.
No.
A lot of them,
No.
their licenses have been revoked,
Yep.
so they make it almost impossible
And
for them
It's
to
not
attend all
set
their
up
classes.
for anybody
It's
to
not.
succeed. It's garbage.
Especially people who are already jumping right into something that
And I hope that through all of this,
No
that
rehab.
all this talking tonight, that I just want to be very clear that I have no animosity towards the police whatsoever.
you're a very
like
accountable man.
I know why I was shot that day. If I hadn't put myself in that situation, I would have never been there. If I hadn't been doing the things I was doing, I would have never got shot. I know that it was, at the end of the day, it was my fault, and I never want to make it sound like I have some chip on my shoulder against the police. I don't. I wish the cops that shot me the best, and if they see
Yeah.
good tonight, awesome, man. I mean,
And
I know that I'm doing good, and that's all you can do in life, is make sure that you are the best person that you can be every single day.
And I love your point, because it comes back to my point with the Shot at Dawn project and its people. Like, just like with suicide, we're dealing with an enemy that knows no color, knows no race, knows no job profession, knows no religion
Yep.
or sexual orientation. And I try to make this point when I talk to people about it. At the end of the day, just like in our judicial system and police and citizens, we're all Americans. And I want a better America. I want a stronger American economy. I want to be the leader of the free world like we are. And I want a lot of this infighting to stop. We're so focused on the left and the right and this and that. We have these social problems going on in our country we need to address, but we're too busy worried about Donald Trump's whatever, or Hillary Clinton's whatever, or this guy said whatever that might be racist. I mean, we're oversensitive, and it's because I have no fucking idea, but it's ridiculous.
And, like, family hating family because you're a Republican or you're a Democrat, like, it's crazy to me, man.
Yeah, and if we put all that aside and come together, much like in World War II, the biggest strides, a lot of big strides were made racially in World War II. We were still a very segregated and racist country in World War II. I mean, blacks weren't allowed to serve in the military. That changed. Then they weren't allowed to serve in combat. That changed. It was the need. We literally... Can you imagine those patriots, African Americans that have been suppressed by our country, yet they stood
For
up
years
and
and
they
years.
fought to go fight? They literally had to fight the army to go fight to get on the front lines, because when they finally let them in, they'd only let them be cooks and be like this. And numerous Medal of Honor winners that are African American were only awarded the Silver Star in many cases because they were African American, not till decades later. But the social strides that were forced on our country because of having to come together, because it was either that or fucking annihilation, were huge. Imagine what we can do socially nowadays if we come together on projects like this and start healing people instead of fucking throwing Band-Aid money on it and throwing more drugs into the economy.
Well,
It's going to take us, the people, breaking it up with politicians, I think, like Larry Sharp. I've met some politicians before. I listen to a lot of them talk. It's hard to take stock in anything they say. It really is. And I want to change that. And I want to meet some that like my ideas, and we can move forward with all this.
and it's not going to happen by us just sitting around talking about it. Like, you've got to get off your ass and you have got to do something. Like, if you want to change, for all you millennials coming up, if you want to really be change, you want to see change, you got to be it. You got to be the change. You got to put your words into action.
Excellent. Yeah, and I love that message, because on the next episode, I want to hear how you did that, how you went from shot 21 times, hopeless felon, to silver medalist, speaking, inspiring, changing lives. It's a great story. And living proof, you went the hard way, but we got to start trying to heal Americans.
And it is not, I mean, anybody out there who, if you think it's hopeless and you think that, there's just no light at that end of the tunnel, I mean, look at where I was at. 21 bullets in me, on my deathbed, and then, to add insult to injury, then I get out and they send me to prison for 2 years. I didn't see a light for a long time, but I can tell you that if you put one foot in front of the other every single day, find something worth living for, grab onto it, and just fight for it.
Yeah, and far be it, what is a what is a small white boy that grew up in a non-populated African American area worried about building a facility like this outside of Memphis? Far be it from me to try to think that I can understand a young man that grew up in a drug gang-ridden community with no father or what have you in the type of scenarios and understand his life and how we could change that. And those same type of men like me are making their decisions for their future when they make a mistake. And I think that we need to look at that as subjectively and say maybe if we put some structure in this kid's life and gave him real alternate sentencing, we could save him. Let that all end.
Yeah, quit just giving up on those communities. Put something back into them, man. I love what you're doing, man.
Yeah,
Seriously.
we're gonna do it. All right, folks. Thanks for joining the Pro Edge podcast. Awesome episode, Dorian Willis. We're gonna get back with him. Hopefully within the next 30 days. You think we can make that happen?
Absolutely.
Excellent. To hear part 2 of his story. We just kind of ran short on time, but we thank you for joining us.
The dog.
Bounty Hunter. If you haven't checked out Dog the Bounty Hunter or the size of his wife's tits, I highly suggest you slide on over to A&E and check him out.
That's funny.
A&E's an unpaid sponsor. Or not a sponsor at all.
No.
Are they even on A&E anymore?
Who?
Dog.
I don't know.
Are they even on at all?
I don't know. He threw down a bunch of N-words on those.
Oh, that's right.
That's right. Yeah, that's never good.
Oh.
That's really not good. That's probably why he's throwing around the whole Native American card now. He's like, no, it's cool, man.
No, man.
It's cool. I'm a minority. I'm suppressed
cool, I'm
too.
1/17 Indian. Like, I don't even think that fraction exists, man. Where did you get those numbers, bro? You're blonde.
That's
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Dude, most
Dreamcatcher?
definitely.
All right.
All right, everybody. Peace out.
The dog.
The dog.